Good afternoon.
Welcome. We are so glad that you are here with us today. We know it's been a long day, so we will be cognizant of your time and go ahead and get started. But this is an opportunity for those of you who mentioned to Dr. Beasley that you're interested in sharing and exchanging information with him as we discuss our priorities for the new school year. So this is the Teachers Advisory Meeting, and we're excited to have you here. And without further ado, I am going to introduce to you Dr. Morsis J. Beasley, our new superintendent of school. Thank you.
Thank you, Jada. All right, Jada, she said new. It's 2 months now, and I'm not new anymore. They broke me in real good. Good to see everybody. How are you all doing today? Was it a good day today? Good. Well, this is the teacher advisory, and really the purpose of the teacher advisory is just to give you a chance to hear from me about things we're working on, and to give me a chance to hear from you about what's working, what may not be working, what we probably need to go back and rethink and reconsider, or an idea we need to think about. So I want to just really encourage you all to just share freely, openly, and safely. And there's nothing that I hadn't heard before. And let's work together to make it better for our kids. This is scheduled to last until 5:30, but I'll be honest with you all, I got a plane to catch tonight, so we're gonna end at 5. I can't miss my plane. And I don't know how long it'll take me to get through security. It's going to a staff development out of town. So if you all will be patient with me this time. But thank you all for being here on today. We have a presentation, but you know, a lot of you as teachers, let's see who we have. Teachers, raise your hand. Any, just associate workers? Anyone else? Behavior interventionists. So a lot of you have already heard some of this because did you participate in the back to school message? Very good. And so let's see if we can save a little time. They've heard me speak to the areas of focus already. Let's go to the next slide. I won't say anything about that one, the theory of change. They've heard some versions of the critical work. We'll just stop right there. So clearly you all, we've got quite a bit of work that we got to do and that we're working on. So I just wanted to share at a high level things that we're doing, the work that we're doing this year. Any document that you want to read, it's already on the website. So hopefully you've seen the 90-day plan, you've seen the 3-year actions, you've seen any other documents that are out there. And hopefully you'll participate in some processes that we'll have this year as we even revise the strategic plan, etc. But the first thing we have listed there is that we're supporting all schools. As you all know, it's so important that we improve our student achievement. And so we're supporting all schools so we can change the data. That's the bottom line. As we'll point out in a minute, we've got about, on an average, about, I would say, 75 to 80% of our kids are performing at the developing and beginning levels. And I think we need to flip that. Would y'all agree with that? And so that's our work. We got to flip that. We need 80% or higher performing at the proficient or distinguished levels. We've got quite a few kids at the developing levels, and at the upper end of the developing levels, if you look at their scale score. So it's just a matter of ramping up that instruction, teaching up higher, so we can get those kids over the hump from that developing level to that proficient level. We're engaging this community, and that's one of the purposes of this advisory, is we want to engage various segments of the community, this being teachers, because you all come with a different perspective. You all are in the classroom, you deal with the kids every day. And so I want to hear from you as to how it's going, what's working, what's not working, etc. But this year we're going through the 5-year SACS renewal process. How many have you heard that? Very good, good. That's important because it's really about all of us. And so hopefully you've taken some of the surveys that are online. We'll be doing some observations in classrooms, and we observe classrooms all year, but we'll be using a tool that SACS provides for school districts to collect certain data, even though it's consistent with our own observation tool, but we're using their tool to collect summary data so we can get a snapshot that will be used to inform our evaluation or SACS renewal process. But we're implementing the critical conversations, and I see that some of the same faces, you've been to those critical conversations, and then the advisory groups. So today we had the community advisory, and now we're having the teacher advisory, and I want to say we're going to skip a month and then we'll come back to this teacher advisory so we can do some of the other advisories. But you say, why so many groups? Because every group has a different perspective. And it's helpful to hear from different perspectives. It helps me to triangulate the data, the feedback. You know, if parents say one thing, teachers say another thing, and another group says another thing, I know I've got to maybe deal with an issue. But it also allows me to get a different perspective too about the issue. And so it's important to have those conversations. And I'll be honest with you, I just like interacting with people too. And I don't know how you improve a school district without interacting with people. Education to me is a community affair, and it's not about me, it's not about one person in particular, it's about what are we going to do as a community to improve our school district and do what's best for our kids. We're working to expand career and college prep opportunities for all students, so I identified some things that we're doing this year, and hopefully you have heard about these efforts. This year, we have implemented a firefighters and EMS pathway at Drew High School and Mundy's Mill High School. And so we've got kids right now in our school district training to be firefighters. Isn't that a pretty good thing? We've also implemented a film and theater pathway at Mundy's Mill High School. And so we're connecting, you know, they say Atlanta is the Hollywood of the South, right? So shame on us if we don't connect our kids to all the jobs and opportunities in that industry. And so we're pleased that the principal and staff at Mundy's Mill High School had enough vision and innovation in them to develop that pathway. This year, we're planning for implementation in next school year, aviation pathway at North Clayton High School and Morrow High School. And so here we are in Clayton County where the world's busiest airport sits, right? We should have aviation pathways, shouldn't we? And that means we want kids to be pilots, we want them to be airline stewards and stewardesses, we want them to be the engineers that fix the planes, we want them to be the ticketing clerks, whatever jobs they exist in aviation, we want to make sure that our students have opportunity and preparation for those jobs. And at Jonesboro High School, we're preparing to implement the Political Leadership Academy, where we're going to train our young people to deal with government leadership, politics at the local, state, federal, and international level. And we expect to see our kids participating in Democratic conventions, Republican conventions, even if they got to go and just report out what's happening there. They may not can vote because they're not delegates, but they should at least be there. We want them, as we share with Dr. Wiley and the principal and Miss Roberson, we want our kids, if there are international conferences going on that students are attending relative to any issue, we expect our kids to be there because shame on us. If we got an airport and everybody's kids are coming to our county, getting on planes, going to these events, and we don't have any kids going. Shame on us. And so we're going to change that. We're, of course, reviewing our internal processes to ensure that we just do a better job at hiring, recruitment, retention. And hopefully you'll see efforts, you can feel and sense that we're improving in those areas, even with the reduced number of vacancies that we have. Still more work to do, but better at this point this year than we were at this point last year. We're using paras now as assistant coaches. We had a need at the high school levels. The head coaches were like, we got paras who we'd like to use as, they call them lay coaches. We call them assistant coaches, but we were able to navigate a few legal hurdles. And now we've got some opportunities provided to paras who are interested in supporting our students in the athletic and band programs as assistant coaches. And then thirdly, we've worked with our safety and security department, transportation department, business services department, to navigate around the hurdle where I don't know how many years it's been, but we've been charging individuals who want to be level 3 volunteers and mentors. We've been charging them the $45 to complete their own background check to help our students. And so we've removed that obstacle, and so now we'll be basically floating that fee for these volunteers. Number 6, high school grad rate always comes up, which it should, because ultimately that's what we're working toward, graduating students. Currently our rate is 69.1%, and so we've got to work to improve that rate. The state's rate is 79%, so we've got a difference of about 10 percentage points from the state. But what are we doing? We're implementing 9th grade transition activities, and you'll see more as we go through this year and prepare for next summer. Some partnerships and some innovative ideas for students to participate in summer activities next year. Monitoring 9th grade credits, you'll see, and you should see more 9th graders earning their credits as principals and counselors and teachers and others are working to ensure that they learn the content, master the content, and that they pass those classes. We know that the data tells us if you can get them through 9th grade, more than likely you'll get them through high school. We're utilizing credit recovery in a timely manner. So let's say the 9th grader struggles in a class, he fails the class in 9th grade. We don't want the student to wait until 12th grade to make up the course. Make it up in 9th grade. As a matter of fact, preferably as soon as you get the F, go ahead and get it made up. And so we're working to ensure that that occurs. The next one, we're connecting our students to career pathways. We have data that tells us in Clayton County, the students who are connected to career technology, they have some type of concentration. They graduate at a rate of 92%. So it makes sense to me that if the overall rate is 69%, then we need to figure out who's not connected to a career pathway and get them what? Connected to a career pathway. So that's our work. Of course, we're utilizing CIS communities and schools in 4 high schools, Drew, North Clayton, Forest Park, and Riverdale. A great resource for supporting students who may need that extra support, that extra motivation, some services, if you will, to stay on track, get closer to graduation, and hopefully graduate on time. And then high school principals have requested that we continue to look at the feasibility of implementing block scheduling at the high school level, and I shared with them that we'll study it from every angle, the staffing that's needed, the instruction that has to occur, the opportunities relative to earning more credits, etc. But they have to all either do it together or not do it together. You can't it just doesn't work when you have half of your schools on block schedule and other half on the regular 6-period day. And so they've all agreed that if we do it, we're going to all do it together. And I told them I wouldn't do it any other way because I've seen a mess in districts where they've tried some schools on block and some schools not on block. It just always creates challenges it's convenient for the schools, but it creates challenges when you have students who go from one school to the what? To another. And I don't think we should put students in that situation. Number 7, we're working through our Swiss process. We're strategic system waiver, school system. And we have about 10, I want to say 10, maybe 12 schools that want to do a K-2 core integration. Basically, they want to teach reading, math, science, and social studies integrated. They don't want to teach ELA in isolation from math or science. And so we're working this year to train those schools on how to do that so they can do it well toward an implementation in next year. We're working to improve the following areas: advanced placement and clearly outcomes. And I'll tell you what we've done with AP. We basically assessed the AP courses to see if they had college level material. And I was told they didn't have college level material. And so we had the AP coordinator to work with the AP teachers, and we identified college level resources for every course that we have an AP offering. And we purchased those materials. Our board approved that, and the materials are, if they've not landed, they are landing, and they're getting trained on those materials, and they're using those materials. You can't expect a kid to read at a college level in world history if he's reading a 10th grade world history book. Because I can tell you a college level world history book is written a whole lot differently than a 10th grade world history book. And so we've worked to close that gap. We're continuing to address dual enrollment, PSAT, SAT, ACT, participation, and outcomes. Discipline continues to be an area of focus. I shared in previous sessions, we had a safety, security, and discipline task force. We've tightened up the student code of conduct. We've worked to basically improve the attendance protocol, tighten that up. So parents and students will know it is important. You can't expect to become a high-performing school district if students don't come to school. We're continuously monitoring that at the elementary level. How many of you are elementary? You should have gotten an extra para in grades 4 and 5, and those paras can be used to even help us with little timeout stations where in case you have discipline problems as students, you have some students, sometimes they're just so disruptive and they need to be calmed down and temporarily removed from the classroom so they don't disrupt the entire instructional process. And so we have additional resources, especially at the K-5 level, to assist with that. Since we don't have, we try to minimize suspension and we don't have an alternative school for K-5 students. But we do know that there are times when they just need a little time away and an hour or two away from everyone else so they can calm down, get themselves together through the support counseling of an adult, and then brought back into the regular classroom. But we're monitoring discipline. Safety and security is monitoring their data. We're monitoring discipline. And your feedback is very important. Do you see an improvement there? And clearly we know that classroom management is a critical variable relative to discipline. It's amazing how students will behave very well in one teacher's class and go right next door and cut up. And we know that the adult in the room makes a difference. And then, of course, for the number 10, we're just seeking to expand partnerships, and I won't read those, but today we shared that with the Clayton County Chamber of Commerce. We want partners, and we need their help in these areas. And lastly, you'll see we're working to get support for our legislative agenda for 2017-2018. And one item in particular is ensuring that we are successful relative to the FAA's interpretation of a federal rule that could potentially take away $9 million a year from our SPLOST funding, which could impact the completion of several current SPLOST projects. So we're working to address that. More to come in that area, because if we need you all to picket for us in front of Delta, I'm going to make some signs and and we're going to all go out there picketing. But we're committed to high performance. It's a process, not an event. I want to share very quickly the data I want you to see. You all have seen this data for your schools, but I just want to show you the work that we've got to do and how we've got to flip these outcomes. And that's why it's so important that we establish coherence and that we know what the instructional focus is, that from one classroom to the next, everybody is teaching that curriculum at the level of rigor that it should be taught, establishing those academically challenging environments so we can increase the likelihood that our students perform at the proficient and distinguished levels when they are assessed. But we also know that we've got to teach and assess throughout the year, so it's not a surprise to us where they are performing in April and in May. So we'll come back to that as they pull up that information.
Our Chief of Technology.
Okay, okay. Rod, can you help them out? Thank you, sir. But until, while Rod is doing that, Dr. Wiley, I want you to give everybody an update on advanced ed very quickly. I think most of these employees are already informed about what's happening with SACS, but it's good to give them a reminder anyway.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I saw all the hands raised that you are aware that we are being reaccredited this year in March 18th to the 21st. So we will, like Dr. Beasley, will need to come to your classrooms and do some observations just to garner some information on where we are as a district before advanced ed comes in March. But because they're going to use the same tool that we're using. And so just wave at us, ignore us, just let us come into your classroom, welcome us, and we'll do that. But most importantly, we do have a community meeting on September 30th from 9 o'clock a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. that we are inviting not only the community, but our teachers, our assistant principals, every stakeholder we can think of, we are inviting, because during that meeting, we are actually going to engage everyone in the revision of our mission vision. We're also going to look at possibly revising our goals and our core beliefs. So we need everyone who's interested in the vision of this district to attend that meeting and have some input and assist us with that revision.
And as a follow-up to that meeting, whatever we do, we'll get it in draft forms, we'll send out in survey, we'll get your feedback, et cetera. That's the same date that we have a board retreat and we have the employee mixer. You all heard about the employee mixer. So I'll be busy that day, but I'll be having fun. And I hopefully you all will come and at least come for an hour or two to the employee mixer and just enjoy the opportunity with your colleagues. I think it's important to share that the 90-day plan is on the website, and the updates are also on the website as well. So if you go to the website, and even if you just go to the superintendent's webpage, you'll see the 90-day plan, and then you'll see the link for the 90-day plan updates. And they're just basically brief statements about what's in progress, and some minor, not a whole lot of language, but a little language about what we're doing in each of the areas that are listed in the 90-day plan. And this is really what you're engaged in here as a part of the 90-day plan to get our community actively engaged. So I'll pause here. They'll get that up, I'm sure, in a minute or two. So let's hear from you all. Let's hear from you all about how's it going out there? How did we start school? How's it going? Is it going in the right direction, the wrong direction, etc.? Okay. Let them bring the mic to you and know that this is being live streamed so everybody can see you around the world. Everybody who's watching, that is, right?
Well, good evening, everyone. Dr. Beasley. Okay. Well, I am Jillian Davis, and I'm a third grade teacher. And within the first few days of being on campus at my school, I could tell that you listened because I saw a difference. I saw a more, I just saw a difference because I was here at the meeting that you had in August, and like I said, the difference was very obvious that you listened to what we had to say.
Thank you.
I have a few questions
okay.
later that some staff members asked me to bring out, but I wanted to say thank you because I did notice a difference, and my just comfort level, just relaxation level is just a whole lot different. So thank you.
Thank you.
Salima Abdullah Langford, Callaway Elementary School. And just as you said, we have seen a tremendous difference in just the culture in our schools. I've noticed that the principals and assistant principals are much more relaxed. They don't seem as stressed as they have been in the past, and that definitely transfers on to us as teachers. While, of course, we know in the beginning of the school year there's always just so much to do. So we're always overwhelmed in the beginning and the end of the school year, but with regards to some of the changes that you've implemented, I can see definitely with curriculum and instruction that our administrators are more flexible in their requirements with regards to lesson plans and the detail of those lesson plans, allowing us more time for collaboration and trying their best to utilize those pairs that you talked about earlier in a meaningful way so that we do get that extended planning time. So that is definitely going on at my school. So again, thank you. You have listened, and we do appreciate everything that you're doing so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think this is actually working. Is it?
It's working.
I don't need it. I'm at Smith Elementary, Joe Barnes, and I would like to say, I'm pretty loud, but I would like to say that the culture in the building is extremely positive. I do believe that's all in your favor. As far as I have attended several of these meetings, I'm very proactive myself, so I want to make sure that, as the teachers in my building have said, they want to make sure it lasts. Some of them are a little hesitant. They tend to feel, and I'm just being honest, I'm like a representative, is it real? Is this really how you're going to continue the process, or is it just for sex? That's one of the questions I've been asked. I told him, as far as I can tell, as I think I've mentioned to you, I'm Team Beasley. I'm believing in the fact that you're here for the right reasons, and when I can see what you are doing already, especially with the aviation, I take my gifted students down to Hampton, to the Air Route Traffic Control Center, and they're only 4th and 5th graders. I don't know if the middle and high schools do, but I've always thought with the air traffic controllers I know there, why don't we have some type of connection with them as an internship or something? Because even you don't even have to go to college to get that type of job. So I want us to get those other outlets, so I'm very appreciative of the information that you shared.
Well, just tell them I don't do what I do for Saks. My principles are bigger than Saks. Okay, so since we got a pause here, so let's take a look at the data. And I know you all have seen this possibly in different ways. So Jada's going to try to make it a little larger for us, but I want you to see the data we got to flip. This is so important. We've got right here, let's go to 3rd grade. Everybody see 3rd grade? We've got about 45% of students performing at the beginning level, 34% at the developing level, 17 at the proficient level, 4% at the distinguished level. So about 21% proficient and higher. What we got to do is get that 80% proficient and higher. Does that make sense? And if you notice our data, it's about consistently that in every grade level. This is ELA. So for grade 4, you got about 27%. Grade 5, 23%. Grade 6, 27%. But notice the number of kids who are in the developing category. Those are the kids that we can quickly move over to what? Proficient. That's why when you hear me say teaching up, creating that academically challenging environment, that's a prerequisite for moving those kids to that proficient level. So since you all are teachers, when you have kids who are in grades 4 through 8 clearly in high school, you have data that you can use to figure out the kids' outcomes for last year, which will give you some idea as to what you possibly need to do with those students this year. And so the work, it's daily work. That's why I use the term consistently, every day, every period, without exception, just teaching up to those students. It's not necessarily always easy because let's say you got a kid in 4th grade and they have some deficits. You've got to address those deficits. And sometimes that's just laborious. It's hard work. It's complex work. But you've got to help them address the deficits in order to learn the grade level content. So I want you to see how we compare to the MRESA. The MRESA would be the districts in the metro area. Your Gwinnett, DeKalb, Cobb, APS, etc., Rockdale, etc. But look at this column, proficient and higher, for our district, and look at this column, proficient and higher for the MRESA, and then for the state. You see the gap between us and the MRESA? That's the average. So our goal is to, of course, close that average. That's our work, to close that average and to flip the data where we have more of our students, 80% or so, performing at the proficient and distinguished levels versus the beginning and developing levels, and that's ELA. You can see in the arrows the areas that we improved from 16 to 17, and you can see the percent that we improved and compared to the percent change for the MRESA and the state of Georgia. Math, in the area of mathematics, similarly, in 3rd grade, we've got about 29% of kids proficient or higher. 4th grade, 29%. Grades 5, 6, and 7 have 21% each grade. and grade 8, 17%. And look at the MRESA and look at Georgia. And so you heard me say on the first day what we're doing with curriculum, ensuring that we have alignment and that we're teaching that content, ensuring that we're assessing students, ensuring that we're using, and that's why it's important. You said, people are more relaxed. When I hear relaxed, I'm interpreting that in a good way, that we're relaxed, but we're not. There you go. We're relaxed and we're focused on using the strategies that our students need to learn those standards at the level in which they will be assessed. That is so, so important. So important. And so I was pleased to hear you say we're spending more time collaborating and planning, because you got to make sure you understand the standards, and don't do that by yourself, teachers. You do that in a community, and that's what collaborative planning is. It's a community of learners, a community of individuals, and sometimes you can read a standard and you may interpret it one way and your colleague may interpret it in a different way, but when you all come together between the beginning and end of the conversation, you figure out exactly what needs to be done, so when you get in that classroom, you can teach the student to that level. No one should be planning and even writing lesson plans by themselves. No one should be doing that. There's no reason for it. First of all, it's just not healthy, and you're on a team. If you're on any particular grade level, not unless you're the only teacher on that grade level, which is not the case, I don't think, anywhere in the district, you should not be doing anything by yourself. You should be supporting each other in the collaborative planning process. You should be supporting each other instructionally, because it's a team. It's a team effort. You should be having those horizontal conversations among your grade level and those vertical conversations among other grade levels, figuring out what are you doing if you're a fourth grade teacher, you should be having conversations with third grade teachers so they'll know what areas you need them to really emphasize. And you should be having conversations if you're a fourth grade teacher with the fifth grade teacher, so you can make sure that you are zoning in and teaching those areas that they need you to teach in order for the students to be successful in the next grade. So I just wanted to show you that data there. You can, Jada, go to the next slide. I want you all to see, this is just grade 3, and I think I put in grade 8 behind that. Yeah, put in grade 8. I want you to see, it's red because it shows you our ranking according to the MRESA, red being the lowest one. Now, y'all know we got to change that, don't you? Oh, yeah. We may be at the bottom today, but that's not a reason to stay there. And we're not going to use poverty and free and reduced lunch status and those issues as a reason to remain at the bottom according to the MRESA. But I want you to see where we are. The first 4 columns of data are 2015-16, and then 2016-17 would be the second 4 columns of data. Okay? And I want them to see the grad rates, just in case they hadn't seen the grad rates. That would be, this is the end of course, high school people end of course data, the percent proficient for our district compared to the MRESA in Georgia. Clearly, we still got a gap, and we got a gap at every level, a gap at every level. And then if you would go to the last page, Dr. Wiley. This is the grad rate. I mean, not, is that the grad rate? Yeah, it looks like the grad rate. Yeah, that's the grad rate. So, go to the, I think the chart maybe start on the other page. It looks like it split my chart. Okay, yeah, it split my chart on your presentation. But you can see our grad rate is 69%. The state's is 79%. So we've got a little work to do to close the gap. And we believe that this year we will see an increase in that 69% grad rate as well. So, I'll pause there. What are your thoughts relative to what are we doing instructionally to flip that data? And I use the word flip loosely, but to flip that data. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I actually have, I guess, maybe 2 questions based on one concern.
Okay.
So I'm a 5th grade teacher. I have all of the gifted kids in my classroom. Mind you, we only have 3. And I have a good majority of the high potential kids within my classroom. We are block scheduled. I teach the science and the math. The other teacher who I switch with, she is not she's not past her gates yet at all. So she's under a provisional license to pass her gates. I know I saw the email about how if you're teaching gifted AP honors, you must be gifted endorsed, and that's what we're moving to. I already signed up for those courses, so yay, I'm happy about that. But I'm concerned because she doesn't have the content knowledge, and because the kids they scored above 4s last year on their GMAS, my concern is that they won't do as well this year.
So, and you all are sharing students, right?
Yes.
So, can you share with me what are we doing at the school level to help her strengthen her content knowledge and pedagogy clearly?
She has a mentor.
Okay, that's a good
The
thing.
mentor has been a teacher she was a 5th grade teacher for 15 years before she even went into EIP.
Okay.
So she's a veteran teacher as her mentor. She
I notice my question.
is
What are we doing? We doing to support her, or him, but her, to improve that content knowledge? Because we understand she's provisionally certified, but if she wasn't there, we'd have a sub, wouldn't we?
correct. However, she is lacking in the area of pedagogy in content.
And I
As
understand.
well as,
we all understand that.
We could not communicate with her officially because she had not been processed.
Okay.
So that's what we were told. So she wasn't processed until the Friday before that, no, because she got a substitute that Monday. So she wasn't able to be in the building until that Tuesday.
She's in the building now.
Yes, so we couldn't communicate with her over the
So-
summertime. However, she's teamed with the social studies and ELA person. I try to assist her where I can, but it's one of those things where she's planning with ELA and social studies, and I reached out to the gifted teacher who's also assisting me, and I told her, and I spoke with her, and she was like, well, send me the lesson plans, and I will make sure I try to embed as much as possible in it for whatever may be lacking while she has them.
So, teachers, any advice? Now, y'all know I have advice, but this is advisory. And so, clearly, you can hear you've got an inexperienced teacher who has students that they have to teach who may need some content knowledge development and pedagogy development. Any suggestions as to how the school should approach that? Because we want the students to do well.
Well, the district does offer a variety of professional development, so I would definitely encourage that teacher to participate in the professional development that's offered on the district level and support her in signing up for those professional development courses. Make sure she's very familiar with Godot. Make sure she knows exactly where to find her standards. Just be a support for her in the sense of making sure she's able to access all of the documents that she needs. Her teacher notes. So as far as you're concerned, you all, I don't want to get ahead of myself, do have planning time, correct?
We do have planning time, and she is enrolled in a professional learning course already.
Okay, so during your planning time, then that would be the time to provide her with those additional resources, making sure that she has everything that she needs in order to grasp that content. Because if she doesn't have the documents and is unable to find those documents, then that may be a part of her struggle as well. And I don't want to make any assumptions, but that's just my suggestion on how you can possibly assist her.
Very good. So let's hear from. They got advice.
Well, I would just like to add, I'm also a gifted teacher, and based on your students, I can truly understand the desire and the concern that they may not grow. The one thing challenging about gifted students is that they're already so high sometimes based on their strength, which could be math or ELA, that even the math teacher would have a challenge in growing that little 2 or 3%. So sometimes just making sure we cover ourselves first. I would say that I've taught gifted, 5th grade forever, middle school forever, and with that being said, individually, her dealing with those students, give her the opportunity. I think she just arrived, 2 weeks ago. Whatever weaknesses she has, there are people in the building, I agree with Dr. Beasley, that should be assisting her based on ELA. You're her equal as far as I'm concerned, being her teammate. Sometimes that can cause concern, a conflict between the team, and now you've got a mess that you didn't really want. There are instructional facilitators, the ELA department head, I think at middle grades. There's somebody in that building that definitely, if she's willing to grow, they'll grow her. It's just a choice.
You're in middle school? No, I'm 5th grade.
5th grade.
5th grade. And we haven't met our ISFs yet, so
Okay.
we have not.
Right. We're training them, so you will. So I would just say that, first of all, we've got to make sure she's involved in that community, professional learning community. She's not planning in isolation. I don't think no one should be taking her lesson plans, writing things into her lesson plan. That doesn't build capacity. They may need to sit down with her and have those conversations, and while they're conversing, she should be writing, based upon their expertise, their knowledge, their experience, etc. I do think it would be important to do some co-teaching in that situation. So I would work with the principal to find someone who could go in there and do some co-teaching with her, because clearly she has a desire to teach, because she wouldn't be here if she didn't. It's just a matter of giving her the support that she needs to develop the content that she needs to develop, and to become more proficient in the pedagogy that we know is expedient for students to perform at higher levels. She won't get it overnight. It won't happen in 1 week. It may not happen in 1 month. But every day will be a day where she gets more success, more experience, and she'll get better and better. But you've got to create that environment where she's free to share her challenges, and you all have to basically come around and support her as she shares the challenges. You all have got to even invite her into you all's classroom to model for her. And then even after that, and so I think once you get your ISFs, that will help.
Yes.
But I would say that the administrative team and you have grade level leads. The grade level leads they gotta kind of take her under their wings until she's at a point to fly on her own. And she will be, it's just at the 3rd week of school, right? So it takes a little energy sometimes, but I think that if we can support her and help her to be successful, we may get someone who will do very well with and by our children. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the ISF. Can you tell me why we decided to remove the ISF from the building and have them to serve 6 schools as opposed to 1? It just seems that we got more done in I'm from Mount Zion Elementary, and our ISF was so familiar with the content across the curriculum. For instance, I have an issue with social studies this year. I know we don't have social studies books. I know we have to look for our resources. I know that we decided to use the newspaper, I forget exactly, what is it? The weekly studies. But the problem is that it's not aligned with our curriculum. We're supposed to start 5th grade, we're starting off with the first 10 amendments, and we're also from there going to the Civil War. The newspapers that were sent to us are on the Industrial Revolution. We can't do anything with that. And someone who's been teaching fifth grade for a long time, been teaching 34 years, so I can basically tell you when it should be taught. And I know that there are changes and that we move things around, but there's nothing in EduTracks. I mean, but if our ISF was still there, she would have fixed all that. She would have made sure we had benchmarks. She would have made sure that we had all the things that we needed. If she would have even taken the time to look for the resources that we need in order that we could be effective. Right now, we're all just running around crazy and don't know which way to go. So I was just wondering, you know, why we decided to remove the ISF from the building. I know that they're still there. We have 6 there instead of 1. And I just wanted,
Well, right now,
thinking on
they're in
that.
training, so we're getting them training.
Okay.
So they're not removed from the building, they're in training. But instead of 1, you will get at least 4. And one reason we decided to change, we had a lot of schools who had ISFs that were supporting them in one area, but they needed support in 3 other areas. And their content areas wouldn't lend them that opportunity. And so we decided to go back and look at everyone's area of certification and figure out how can we provide core content support to every school. And so the decision was, remember, and this is my philosophy, we're going to do what's best for the children. And I need to support teachers. I need to ensure that on every campus, no matter what subject they're teaching, they have support. And so I just basically had to restructure the ISFs because we had so many who were concentrated in math, so many in science, so many in social studies, and then they were at various levels, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. And so we stepped back, we looked at that, and we restructured so that everybody, for the level that they're on, could get core content support. It requires the ISFs to have a few additional schools, but I think that the structure lends itself to us actually improving and helping teachers improve in the content area. And so we ask that you all be patient with us because we're tweaking it. We're trying to make sure they get good training because we want them in their roles. They need to know how to coach. They need to know how to support teachers. And I think sometimes people assume just because they were a good teacher, they know how to coach. No, that's not necessarily the case. And so we had to provide, and that's what they're doing right now, and engaged in some training. Now, relative to that issue, I'm going to be Dr. Beasley today. I'm going to even take off my superintendent hat. First of all, we got this, you know what the standards are. If there are some resources, what did I send you all? I want to say that first, I sent you all a memo with all the curriculum with all the curriculum links, didn't I? And I put in there the name of the content coordinator if you needed to contact that content coordinator. That name wasn't listed there just because I wanted somebody to get their name highlighted. That name was there for you to reach out to that social studies person and let them know this is not working, I need this. And that's what they're there for. So my question to you is, I need you to go back and do that, because let me say this. See, we're in this platform and everybody in the world is hearing us. But that's an issue that I would have expected to have been communicated and addressed by these individuals who are positioned to support schools. And so I need that, and I wrote it down in my notes. I need that social studies academic coordinator to have the opportunity to know what the issue is to address that.
She has been contacted by members of her school. I personally have not, but yes, she has been contacted.
Good.
We have expressed our concerns, but you know, it's just now in the 3rd week of school, and I know that the in-service that we had with the social studies weekly people, he just seems like that they were prepared. They had a line there, the papers with our standards, and really nothing big has changed, and that just was amazing to me that we got something that really falls in the middle of the curriculum the first week of school. So I was just wanted to.
No, that's good to bring up though, because if you're having that challenge, then that means other people teaching social studies are having that challenge. So that's something for us to go back and look at. That's why this is advisory. We need to know, Because if it's not working, if something's not working, we got to figure out how to fix it. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you.
If
Just to answer your original question about what we can do to see greater gains and high performance in our children, something that is very, very clear is that our demographics is interesting to note. Our children are predominantly from other countries and homes that do not speak English as the first language. So what you have there is a serious challenge with reading fluency and also the vocabulary, especially the different tiers of words that are used in the standards and also how the tests are phrased. And so something that we have done as a third grade level in our school is to give a quick fluency test while we wait for Dibbles and M-Class to come back. And that test, a quick 1-minute test in our classrooms, and it showed who was at the different levels below, the 2 medium, and really high. So then we came together and we looked at our numbers and we created groups based on those numbers. So in our remediation and enrichment time in the morning, we've decided to use that time to remediate and enrich. So as the one with the strongest background in phonics, because my first year, 15 years ago, I was trained in Orton Gillingham. That's the best phonics program I have seen. It's to teach children with special needs. However, you don't say that. You teach everyone who needs help because it's so well crafted and simple. So I will be working with the lowest children and the non-readers from all of the classrooms. And another teacher will be working with the second highest and so on. And we will attack fluency with phonics. And the gifted learners and the higher learners, we will focus on syllabication with those 3 and 4 and 5 syllable words, and also learning to use those vocabularies in real world scenarios, and also how to answer, the art of answering multiple choice questions, because it's an art and a science. And it doesn't matter how gifted our children are, if they're not taught the art and science of answering a multiple choice question, the test will reflect that they're not proficient and higher. So that's what's
everything that you shared, notice what you shared. It's what your team came together and made a decision to do.
Yes, sir.
You thought critically about your students, about the
relax,
data,
think.
and you made some decisions, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And in other words, you determined that that you all were the solution.
Yes, sir.
Right? That is so important, and that's really the work. Yes, we have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to ensure you have resources. So do you have resources?
Yes, sir. We have index cards. We have rings that we have a lot.
Okay.
We could still use some more, so we're going to ask our
You
principal.
have time for planning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have resources, time for planning. You have teachers, colleagues that are teachers, certified teachers. You have vacancies.
There are 2 vacancies on our grade.
On your grade level.
So we do a lot of help.
So you help, okay. And you have support of your principal.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have are you the grade level chair or the
Yes,
grade
sir,
level
I am.
lead?
Yes.
Very good. But you brought the team together, didn't you?
Yes.
And you figured out what you needed to do. You're using data,
Yes, sir.
right? And so my point is that you all thought critically about your problem,
Yes.
looking at your students, and you developed and implemented a solution that you thought would be appropriate.
For our students.
And you're monitoring your outcomes, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
So in case you need to tweak that solution
Yes.
or revise it. That's the work, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the work.
Yes.
And I can assure you, you are probably more informed than I would have been because you know phonics.
Yes. And
I was taught phonics many years ago,
right. And
but I can't teach phonics. I know how to read, but I can't teach phonics. And so I think that's important. That's important. But again, you are the solution.
yes.
And I think if there's a message that we've got to make sure perpetuates our district is this, or permeate our district, is this: we are the solution.
Yes.
And you got to really think critically about your problem, your situation, and bring the resources to bear on addressing that problem. And I think that's how that data is going to flip. I know that's how that data is going to flip. Sometimes, you know, people have got to, nobody's coming to there are many different ways of approaching instruction, aren't there? Yeah, there are many different ways. And so you have the opportunity now to make the decisions that you believe are best for your children. All I would say is look at your data and make sure that whatever strategy you're using is working. And you monitor it. And don't be so tied to a particular approach that if you see it's not working because that's just your comfort zone, that you choose not to change because that's just where I am, my comfort zone. No, you got to always do what's best for the who? For the children, which means sometimes if you see it's not working, even though I'm real comfortable with that strategy, but it's not working, I've got to abandon it and maybe or tweak it or try something different. Okay? I see her hand.
I think on the same line, I want to speak to another entity in our education settings is our DES, our special education students. I understand, I believe in uniformity in education, but as it relates to our students, one size does not fit all. We have, and we're using and implementing certain tools that were designed, bought, purchased, in my opinion, for particularly general ed students, those who don't have deficits like language hindrances and so forth and so on. And it works for those children. Knowing that one size does not fit all, I would really like us to, as a district, to look into things that are specifically purchased, bought, found, taught, professional developments for both gen ed and special ed teachers for working with children with disabilities. This is very small, but just to use an example for the purpose of examples, the U-shaped design for elementary that was placed in all schools is a great idea in theory, but when you start to look at the children who are placed in inclusion settings with multiple disabilities, your EBDs, your OHIs, your LDs, your SLDs, your SDDs, that setting in the classroom, something really small, but that setting does not work. And so as I'm one of your interrelated resource special needs teachers, and I'm voicing today what I'm experiencing from hearing from gen ed teachers with our children in their classrooms. If it doesn't fit, should or could these teachers be afforded the autonomy to change their classroom environment and their setting to accommodate children with multiple disabilities? As well, and the environment is just one, but I would also like to look at things like our DI, which does not, by the way, fuse with the reading street very well, but it's even more difficult to deal with children who have disabilities and are not able to grasp that, I don't know, it's just...
So my question is, if I can just cut you off a second. My question is, why does a question like that about what's good for your students elevate to this type of platform? Why is that not being addressed with the principal and the department making decisions, as I've shared, in the best interest of children? That's my question.
I feel like what probably you have not heard enough of is that they have. It's just the answers that we get are not satisfactory. I do not have. I've worked for 7 years as a resource and related special needs teacher. I've asked for the reading materials, the TEs, the cards, and so forth and so on, that because you've asked for us to work collaboratively and co-teach with these teachers, I should be afforded those same materials. If you survey your teachers throughout the district, you may be surprised to find that many of us have not been afforded those materials to help support the teachers like we would like to, or that we should. And then some of the materials that are being given to us are not appropriate for the disability. So because we're talking about progressiveness here, and I feel that would help. And these children are documented in our scores and our data that we see, because they're expected to know, to learn, and to be able to do exactly what their peers are doing. So let's give them the appropriate supplies and advantages that the other children have, but do it in such a way that it caters to them specifically.
So am I hearing you say that you have students who you have to teach, but the materials are not appropriate for them because of their disabilities?
In some cases, the materials are not appropriate
And
or
so
not there.
So how do you,
More so not there,
or not there?
yes.
Am I hearing, and I saw others shaking their head, that you have requested materials that you're not getting? Am I hearing that as well?
I don't know how many DES teachers are present, but for us, those materials are year after year. We ask for certain things, and they're given first priority to your gen ed teachers. And for us, we're told to wait, but they never come. And so I would like us to try to fix that if at all possible, sir.
Aren't you all teachers?
I am.
But I know that we hear the same thing in the building from the special ed teachers. I think I mentioned to you that I came from, that I did about 4 or 5 years with Atlanta Public Schools. One of our top special ed teachers left APS, talked her into coming to Clayton County, and she saw things like IEPs with the wrong child's name on them, where someone's copied and pasted them, that there are no supplies, that it took the special ed teachers about 6 weeks to get started serving children. She was serving them on the 3rd day. She thought it was the most ridiculous thing she had ever seen. And this is a top person, and she left the district after 1 year. And I just thought that was so sad, because she had so much to offer our children. APS, the reason I talked her into it is because I never had a child she serviced that could read. Not one. If she served them, they could read. And just think that we could have used her.
The district definitely has the resources, so there's no reason why you should not be able to give those resources to the students if they're being requested in the proper way. So there should be some procedures in place on the school level for requesting those types of materials, like the TEs and the workbooks. I know I can just use myself as an example, the special education teacher that works with the students that are in my classroom. I made sure that she had everything that she needed. Every student was provided the same resources that the general ed students were provided, down to the TEs, to the workbooks. If we had to order it, we did so. So
it seems like we've got some gaps relative to the availability of those resources. So that's okay. This is why this is advisory. It gives me some information to take back and work with the appropriate people to see what we need to do to address those gaps. And I will say this, because sometimes the resources, they're just that, resources. And the resources may not necessarily be everything you would like them to be to address the needs of every child. But remember, as teachers, we're very resourceful, aren't we? And so sometimes it's just a matter of Googling, taking the resource you have, planning differently to use the resource a little differently. And so, but But those are conversations I think that need to occur in those collaborative planning sessions. So let's say you have a set of resources and you have several special needs students that you think that the resources may be somewhat challenging for. I think an appropriate question would be to the colleagues in this learning community would be, okay, how can we use these resources to help address the needs of our students? Can we frame the activities differently? Can we frame the use of those resources somewhat differently? Are there aspects of these resources that we can use or possibly use differently to help us meet the needs of the students? And so I do agree we need to make sure if you're a teacher, you need to have all the teacher additions, etc. But I want to caution us that even sometimes with the resources, you still have got to look at those resources and plan accordingly, because they may not necessarily be exactly what your students need. Okay?
Within DEF, there are different departments, and so there's your AU units, of course, and then your pre-K classrooms and so forth. I'm speaking mainly from a viewpoint of your interrelated teachers. When these other groups are able to do purchase orders for those specific type of materials for those children with disabilities, our department does not. And I've been working with Clayton County for about 7 years. I've turned in orders that were specifically for children with LD or SLD or so forth and so on. Those are not honored. And as your resource teachers, I'm sure you know, we work very hard during the case managing with trying to account for every child and every disability so that those monies are there for our county, but they're not always allocated for supplies and so forth that we need. I have a child who has a vision impairment right now, and I need a slant desk. So of course I'm going to contact the BI department to see if I can get a magnifier and a slanted desk and so forth. No answer.
Where's your principal? You contact your principal?
My principal, and we
Okay.
wait, and we wait. And then I put out fires of those parents that call, that go, I've asked, I've said, I've taught, and it should not go to that extent. So I'm hoping that some kind of conversation happens where that makes it easier for not just myself, but those who are coming in to the county, so that we pave the way for them to make it easier. So let's just get some clarity on how these things are supposed to happen, so that they're thoughtless, they just happen.
Right.
And that doesn't exist right now.
Okay.
Dr. Beasley, I did have one question. I know we're running short on time, so I wanted to make sure I got it in. With regards to early release days, we had our very first early release day yesterday. Is there an outline with regards to the purpose of the early release days and what the expectation is for what we should be doing on early release days?
Last year the district led those PL days for an hour and a half, and it was very ineffective. So we turned that hour and a half back over to principals and say, use this for your teachers to be engaged in professional learning. And so that is a campus level decision.
Okay, so the principal determines
Principal working with their
with
team.
the teachers what should be happening on that day.
That's correct.
Okay, so if those events are, you said ineffective, last year they were ineffective. So if we see a trend that they are continuing to be ineffective and not a great use of our time, what should we be doing as teachers?
You'll see, this time it didn't happen, but every school will have a monitor going forward. I gave them this time to kind of figure out what they were going to do.
Okay.
But going forward, we will be monitoring every school's professional learning so I can see if the time is being used effectively. Okay, but this first time would have been a great opportunity for the school to plan out or even have conversations about what you would like to do for the rest of the year. It's just an hour and a half, so you've got to be strategic about what happens in that hour and a half.
What time should teachers be leaving on those early release days?
Well-
15, or is it?
Well, you all know, you talking to the wrong one when it comes to time. Y'all are exempt employees, so we don't even have that conversation. We don't even have that conversation because we are not employees who get paid by the hour. We get paid salary.
Okay, so if it extends, it extends.
Yeah, that's part of teaching. And everybody knows that. Anybody who's been through any school education knows that we ain't no 40-hour-a-week people.
Dr. Beasley.
I guess she thought I would answer that one differently, huh? Don't happen, nope. No, we know how it goes, and that means sometimes you gotta stay until 5:30. But I mean, as example, yeah, come on, y'all.
Many of us are staying that late.
I understand. But an early release, it depends on the school, but you all work with your principals on that, and make it worthwhile. Make it worthwhile. You all should be learning, engaged in some type of collaboration and learning and staff development. And so we'll be monitoring.
That's where our principal is fair, and she remembers when she was a teacher also, and our assistant principal. She remembers sitting in those meetings that were boring, that meant nothing to us at all, that it was just a way of filling up time. So she, during post-planning last year, she asked us for some of the things that we wanted to address.
Right.
During those professional development days, and she got a lot of things. She let us know things that she could not work with, and then she let us know things that she would be able to work with. And it's worked out pretty good.
But notice the conversation she had, right? Yes. That's important. Good leaders have those conversations. So if you hadn't had that conversation, go back to your leader. Say, can we have that conversation?
Okay.
That conversation. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Beasley, my name is Coretta Pearson, and I'm a DES teacher at the Eddie White Academy, and I'm not having those issues with the resources that the other DES teachers have, and so my heart goes out to you. But my question that I had, from my understanding, we have a lot of new gen ed behavior specialists. And this year, this is my third year here in Clayton, I have a lot of EBD students, and we only have one behavior specialist, Miss Pamela Jordan. And in my humble opinion, we have too many students just to have one. So could it be considered to hire more behavior specialists for the special ed students that need the behavior specialist?
Thank you for sharing that. So we'll have to go back and look and see what we have and how they're assigned. We'll go from there, okay? Thank you.
Yesterday's professional development, we talked about common assessments. And it was good information, and I agreed with everything. However, those common assessments I feel are more focused when we have unit tests from the county that we can use as summative and something that we're working toward. The problem in kindergarten, I'm a kindergarten teacher, taught it for 13 years. Some of the unit tests are not very useful. Kindergarten, our kids are tested with GKIDS, and it is a skills-based test. So getting a multiple choice test for math, science, or whatever is not as effective. And it doesn't address all of the skills that the kids are expected to be able to do. I wonder if it is possible for us to get district tests to align with the units that we have, especially in math, that would align with GKIDS in a format that we can actually use the results of that and transfer it to GKIDS when we're doing our assessments.
We'll have to look at that because I know when we started doing SLOs years ago, were you around when we did SLOs? We had to ensure that we were assessing reading and math. Then we I think at some point they wouldn't even allow us to use G-Kids, I want to say, as a SLO. So we developed SLO. You should have unit assessments. You don't have unit assessments? You have them.
We have them, but they're multiple choice.
Right.
And we have like 10 to 15 questions.
Right.
And they just can't, multiple choice test just can't adequately show.
That is challenging in kindergarten. Are you all reading directions to the students, reading the test to the students?
Yeah. The thing is, when we have a lot of standards like are able to write the numbers, are able to count out objects. If we get one question that says, write the number 3 here, it doesn't really test that they can write number 1 through 10. If we get a question that has them to say how many, and it's 8, it doesn't say that, it doesn't show that they can count out objects of different. And it also is testing whether they're able to take a multiple choice test.
Yeah.
Things like sorting, taking a multiple choice test on sorting.
Yeah, and really there are pros and cons, because as I listen to your question, it would be a longer test for you if you had to actually assess every student. And so the pro of the multiple choice test is that you don't spend 5 or 10 minutes on each problem with every student. So I hear what you're saying, though. We probably need to look at that again to see if there's a balance. I think we want kids to, even in kindergarten, we want them to get acclimated to the multiple choice concept, because as they go to 2nd grade and 3rd grade, we don't want them experiencing multiple choice for the first time. But I also know in kindergarten, we've got some challenges relative to how are we really assessing, and if the question is really assessing the standard.
And I have some ideas of how we can actually assess the standards, but it be more broad and something that can be entered into EduTrack.
Yeah, we've got to be mindful of that, because we don't want teachers spending 10 hours entering data into EduTrack.
Right.
So it's a balance there, but I hear you loud and clear. So I've made a note to take that back to the team for us to look at. Okay? All right. They said I had 5 minutes, right? Okay.
Was the data any different before we stopped testing first and second grade? Were the children doing better before we stopped testing?
Remember now, the data now that we have is GMAS, and the data prior to 2015 was CRCT, so it's really no comparison. So I really can't answer that. And we only tested the lower grades during CRCT. We've never tested kindergarten, 1st and 2nd since GMAS. Okay?
Are we getting closer to appointing our director of Department of Exceptional Students?
Yes, we're interviewing in the next few days, so we are getting closer. Okay?
That the assessments are, the unit assessments sometimes have questions in there that were not covered by the standards. So we do notice that some of the questions on the test, we did, like, it would have questions on graphing when we only did rounding. So of course.
It wasn't covered prior to?
It wasn't covered as part of what was told to us to cover. We noticed that happening.
Well, and when those situations occur, I would encourage you all to email the content coordinator. That's why you have the name, so they can escalate that to their awareness. So we can figure out a way to, they can figure out a way to address that.
Yes. And
You haven't covered on quite a few tests.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Go on.
And my second question, I hope I don't get it. It's about incentives, because there seems to be a high turnover rate of special education teachers and inclusion teachers. with that, we're seeing an influx of children with special needs, with serious EBDs and all of these different other categories. The workload is on another level, especially if you are the grade level chair, especially if you are with new teachers, which you have to help train, and also permanent subs. So I was wondering if there's any thought into any incentives for special education and inclusion teachers.
Well, you know, we have the current incentives for the hard areas that are the areas that are hard to staff. Beyond those current incentives, we've not had any conversations about incentives. We are working to see if we can provide additional support by bringing in some, if you will, some individuals who can serve as like lead teachers in special ed or consultants who can help with the IEP expectations, the case management expectations, so we can provide some relief in that regard.
Before we leave that subject, if I may, you must be reading my mind. When I notice the incentives for them, I would like to consider adding hard staff, our compliance specialists. I'm not one, but those ladies and gentlemen work very, very hard to help keep us into compliance. They usually serve multiple schools. I noticed that they were categorized just like teachers, and I for one would just disagree with that because of the work that they do. They help keep mine in particular.
But it's not based on the work that they do. It's based upon
the work that they do and the amount of work that they do.
I hear you, but
manage children and adults.
But I hear you. But remember, it's hard to staff. I don't have any vacancies in compliance area.
I understand, but at the same time,
I hear you though.
those individuals, and I said I'm not one, but I salute those ladies.
And we do salute them. But hard to staff, because I got some folk over here who are not compliance specialists who will say, Dr. B, we work just as hard. We want those incentives too. So I hear you. I hear you. You're doing good. You are doing good. You're doing good. Thank you.
I've noticed that a lot of other counties have moved to teachers being paid twice a month. Will Clayton ever look at doing something on those lines? She said incentives. I was like, oh yeah, I have a question about that.
As a matter of fact, that comes up every time I have a conversation. We are in the process of purchasing and putting in a new system for HR business services system. So once we get that new system in place, then it lends itself easily to paying twice a month. So just be patient with us as we get through the hurdles of getting the new system in place. You know, I used to get paid twice a month too, and I can tell you Sister Beasley liked that twice a month check. So yeah, I remember getting paid the first few years that I taught, the once a month thing. It really helped me to become disciplined. And then I went to twice a month. I liked that a whole lot better. I was less disciplined with twice a month. And now I'm going back to being disciplined again.
Hey, just one quick thing, Dr. Beasley. I know I noticed there were several teachers in the room that have over 30 years experience. And you already know I've said this before. It's a very small percentage in the county. I think as far as an incentive goes, I think that's an area to look at incentives as well.
Very good. And you should know, we are looking at the pay scale going forward. And just so you'll know, I'm starting at the more experienced. I'm looking at those who have been here longer, so we can make sure we have, we don't want any inconsistency. And we notice that the longer you've been here, there are some inconsistent steps. And so we're working to address that as we go forward. So a lot of work, y'all, I'm telling you, y'all give me a lot of work. But I try to get it all done. We try to get it all done. These folks, we're working. And so when you all give me something and I write it down, I do go back and do something with that information. And so this is very helpful. So special ed, we got our eye on that area for many reasons. And so you're going to see some improvements in that area. So we're going to get the director hired, but even beyond that, you're going to start seeing some improvements. I'll just leave it at that if that's fair. Okay.
Someone mentioned that the GES teachers don't have access to TEs, but all of the TEs are online. And I don't understand why they don't have access to them, because they can go on Connect Ed and every TE comes up for every grade level. So
Yeah, the TEs
I'm a
are
little
online,
bit
but
confused
the
about
pieces
that.
that accompany the kids, so like I'm primary, so the things like the cards and the decodables and so forth and so on. When you have the small group students and do that in the special ed classroom, certain classrooms don't have, and it's not just my school. Some of your AU units are not getting those kids like they should, and I don't think everyone's aware that that's happening, and that's why I brought that to the forefront. Yes, we can access it online, but you guys got these amazing little letter tiles and so forth and so on. And those resources are what I'm speaking of mainly, that should be afforded to all students, because they're all expected to know.
So we'll work. I had that on my list, so we're going to take that back to look at that. Well, thanks, everybody. I told you all I have a flight to make, but y'all have done well. And so we'll see you all again. I believe we skip a month, so we'll see you. And so make sure you come back in October. But don't forget about the employee mixer. Did y'all get that email? If you don't come but for an hour or two, make sure you come. Yes, we're going to have a great time. We're figuring it out. We're going to have good food. We're going to have good food, so you all make sure you come, okay? We will. Thanks everyone.